Welcome to EdTech Monday Uganda, that's brought to you by the Mastercard Foundation in partnership with the Innovation Village through the EdTech Lab. EdTech Monday Uganda is a platform to engage Uganda's EdTech community and other relevant stakeholders, including government, private sector donors, on the emerging topics of education and how technology can address those challenges. EdTech Monday is held once every month, and we dissect the education sector, the future of education, and the available opportunities to grow that sector. In this episode, we shall discuss the access to digital resources, answering questions like how do we get to use the lessons from the remote learning during COVID-19 to reach all the in and out of school learners and increase access to skills? Why do developing countries have broken education management information systems, and what can we do to fix them? Joining me in the studio for this conversation are expert panelists Daniel Mugenga, the co-director at Lesson, Allan Ssemakula, the enterprise director at Airtel Uganda, and Moses Wamange, the national chair of KAWA Uganda. I want to start with Daniel Mugenga. Daniel, I wanted us to first talk about what is your perception of the digital resources that are available for learners on the Ugandan cyberspace?
Okay, we look at access to internet. The penetration has been actually given a mandate to the Ministry of ICT, for example, who have the mandate to make sure all the citizens have access to the internet. But also the Ministry of Education has a very good national ICT policy, actually, which talks about in the strategic plan, which I reviewed not too long ago. So my question is, are these two organizations or these various bodies, are they communicating? So I see that there could probably be an independence in each of them, but I believe if they collaborated, there will be much more access to digital learning resources for everybody in this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that submission. Mr. Moses Wamange, if we could come to you. You've been teaching in the education system for a long period of time, and now with the COVID-19 pandemic, it's presented us new challenges. What is your perception of the way education has been changed by COVID-19, particularly around the fact that it has to move towards technology?
Yeah, thank you, Raymond. I think it is a period of many challenges, but it is also a period of opportunities. So it is up to the teachers, the education ministries, the leaders at every level to see really how we can take advantage of the tools which are available to ensure that there is continued learning, teaching and learning. So right now, as far as Uganda is concerned, there is a lot of content online. We have, of course, the infrastructure in place, although there are challenges, but at least we can see that all over the country, there is network signal.
Thank you so much. I know when you mentioned internet, Allan must have flinched a little. Allan, speak to us about the kinds of investment that you're making at Airtel Uganda to be able to accommodate learners on the internet and the capacity that they need, particularly in internet speeds and even accessibility, to be able to access learning resources.
Yeah, thanks. So as part of the investments that we've made at Airtel, you start with the technological infrastructure that basically delivers the internet through your device. And these are largely what you'd call base stations or sites. So we've invested in more than 2,000 sites in Uganda. And I think I can tell you we cover, in terms of connectivity over landmass, well over 90% of the landmass in Uganda. You've got 4G coverage, very, very good speeds in the remotest of areas in Uganda. Even if you go to places like Karamoja, go to Kisoro, you've got internet coverage on 4G LTE fast connection to the internet today. So that's part of the investment that we've done. But we've not just stopped there. We've also laid quite a sizable distance in terms of fiber that we've laid on the ground to support this backbone infrastructure. And today we've got a lot of connectivity that we're working jointly with our industry regulator, the UCC, to provide connectivity to some of the government schools.
Thank you so much, Allan, for that. I now want to get back to Daniel, and I want us to speak about the disparities in education, which is a very political matter. You have areas in Uganda where access to the internet is still very low, but equally access to the platforms on which the internet would work is also still very low. And majority of it is because of poverty. Majority of it is also because the regions are not actually developed. And we see this particularly in the outcome of the results that we get from UNEB, for example. How do we address these disparities in this COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you. Just to go back to a gentleman from Airtel, spoke very well about connectivity. But one of the biggest challenges we have faced as a platform called The Lesson is the cost of internet. For example, much as we've brought our cost of accessing the platform down to just less than the price of a Rolex, the connection is what increases the costs. So we're trying to actually lobby your particular company and others, but we're not finding much cooperation. So there's a disparity, there's no much support from the providers of this service with those who are providing the content. So if we can actually have a partnership, or I'm glad you're here so we can maybe continue the conversation, but connectivity, yes, but affordability is one of the challenges. Now you speak about the disparity. I believe we have very good policies in this country, but my issue would come with the implementation strategy. How? If you look at our neighbor in Kenya, the Minister of ICT in that country is the former head of Google Africa. If you look at his profile, it says technology enthusiast. Look at our neighbor in Rwanda. She's actually has a master's degree from the MIT, one of the best IT schools in the world, and the former head as well of the ICT Innovation City. And if you look at her profile, it says IT enthusiast. Now come to our country, you look at our current minister, I look at his profile, he's actually a medical doctor. And his profile says he's a specialist in public health. Now, somebody in that capacity may not understand the issues of the nitty-gritty of the IT, what organizations like mine that are trying to provide affordable access to children all over the country may not be able to understand that. So I believe if we had the right implementation strategy, but also the supervisors of this strategy should actually be able to defend some of these policies that are trying to disrupt the penetration or the improvement of access to internet and affordable education.
Thank you so much. I want to bring Moses. Yeah, I want to bring Moses into this conversation. Moses, you have a lot of work that you're doing with KAWA Uganda in terms of putting together literary resources that young people can use on the internet to learn. I want to ask you, from your own assessment, particularly learning online, are young people actually learning from these literary resources that are being dumped on the internet? How do you measure that these young people are learning in the first place?
Thank you so much, Mr. Mujuni. Actually, it's not just like dumping on the internet. No. There is a lot of teaching going on, and there is also learning going on. I can tell you that there are organizations. Let me take the example of KAWA Uganda. We are working in a collaboration with the National Curriculum Development Center. We signed an MOU to produce culturally relevant content, the content which a learner can use, and they can see that there is a change in the academic performance. So I think the challenge is basically on capacity of the parent knowing that this kind of content, maybe let my child use my smartphone and access this kind of content. So right now I can see that different organizations are carrying out Zoom meetings. For example, under ASHU, Association of Secondary School Head Teachers of Uganda, the organization we partner with, we have held a series of Zoom meetings And we have guided school leaders to know where there are right platforms, the platforms which have Ugandan content which is based on the curriculum.
Let me close out with Allan. Allan, you're doing a lot of impressive work in making sure that the internet is affordable and accessible to young learners across Uganda. But the question that has been raised, and even Daniel talked about it, is that of disparities. There are areas where, for example, the only connectivity is a 3G network. There are areas where connectivity is still so low and people are unable to access network connectivity there, and yet there are learners who need to access the same material as learners in the city. Do you look at this as a problem at Airtel Uganda, and how are you trying to solve it?
Yeah, I think in terms of, the network coverage, we've done our part and continue to do our part in improving the connectivity across the country. As I told you, today we've got more than 2,000 sites. All our sites today are 2G, 3G, and 4G enabled sites. Okay, so the connectivity in terms of fast, reliable, affordable internet reach, I think we've by and large done a very good job. But I think there's a slightly different twist, right? So I think, it's one thing to have the internet readily available, but you need to have a device that can actually connect you to the internet to get that value, right? So today when I look at the education sector, and I've done a bit of a deep dive into, the government schools, okay? I mean, in terms of the schools that we have today, right? And this is across all levels, excluding the nursery schools, right? But from primary level all the way to higher institutions of learning, we have about 12,400 government institutions today, right? When you look at number of students, I would estimate it anywhere between 11 to 12 million students, the bulk of them being primary, and those are really remote, and in most cases you find, access to devices is usually an issue, okay? I think from a thought perspective, I think there's opportunity to either tackle it as a private sector jointly with government, because, I mean, if we're going to put handsets in the hands of every single student, I mean, the investment is quite a lot, right? But I do believe there is a way that the private sector and the Ministry of Education today can come up with a way of getting these devices into every single hand of every student across the country. Then we start harnessing the power of the internet.
Thank you so much, Allan. We're going to take now a very short break, but when we get back, we continue the conversation on access to digital resources for young learners and how that can be accelerated during this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you so much for staying with us on EdTech Monday as we have this conversation on access to digital resources for learners and how that can be accelerated during this COVID-19 pandemic. Our panelists have been doing a great job at breaking down for us this seemingly complex subject. But now I want to start with Daniel. When we ended, Allan was talking to us about a private sector effort working with government to put handsets in the hands of young learners and making sure that those young learners do not get left behind by the disparities that could be created. You work with the private sector and you run a very good model called The Lesson. Do you think that this could be a solution? Do you think that it's a solution? And if it's a solution, how can it be executed?
Yes, actually, I believe it's a very good point he raised. It is possible if there's actually collaboration between the private sector and also the various government bodies. For example, I think last year we received some money from overseas to support us with education during the pandemic. If I read according to the news, it was about $800,000, which maybe is maybe over $2 billion to support. But what instead was done, that money was used to print packs that were given to children across this country. Now, in my particular neighborhood, none of us received those packs, and many of the people I know never received those packs. But now, if there was some, I believe that kind of funding was an opportunity to introduce now IT into this mix. Now, how do you collaborate now? Check with this ministry. What do you have in place? Then, but we have to accept that things have changed. You know, we need to adapt with these times. Maybe the problem we have, or the situation we have, is we think this is a temporary situation, so we're just trying to hold on just a bit, and we go back to the old ways. But the sooner we adapt our mindsets, believe me, I believe we shall make greater strides. Like the ideas are being mentioned, like how do we get gadgets to a grassroots level. I believe with some of this funding, it can actually just, through collaboration, be diverted to the right channels.
Moses, do you think that this is a policy alternative that we should undertake, providing learners with handsets at their hands and their disposal so that they can improve their learning of digital resources? Is this something that you'd recommend?
Yes, it is viable. Even right now, as we speak, government through National Curriculum Development Center in the new curriculum, it is a recommendation that a learner should come to school with a handset. It is just an issue of mindset change. When these learners are given clear instructions, they are empowered to know that a handset is a library. It is the key to life. You see, they are able to use these handsets to ensure that learning takes place. So what causes the problem is that they misuse them simply because what is, like right now on their handsets, what is there? You find most of them are having music, they're having videos which are not related to academic. But when a learner is at school, knowing that he is for 2 years, for example, A-level, 2 years, and the handset has the whole biology syllabus, it has the practical lessons, it has all this, one can be able to do a lot. And let me tell you something about these handsets. If in a handset there is a memory card of, say, 128 GB, because they are there on the market, you can have all offline resources being in the handset. And that is a school on its own. A learner can be able to learn. So the role of a school, the role of a teacher is simply to inspire, to ensure that a learner makes use of this handset, because that is the whole library. I also want to add that as the KAWA, we are adding value by creating content which is to run offline. So through the offline arrangement, we are trying to support schools, trying to support school leaders with the devices like say C3 Cloud, Raspberry devices, which can take off the whole platform, a whole learning management system platform offline. So what we are doing right now is to convince school leaders that this is a solution. I know Airtel has played a role, but it is very difficult for somebody to watch, say, 10 videos, because now content comes in both video, and most people really go in for video. And what we're trying to encourage, for example, you see as teachers, there are some of the things we teach. You teach even what you have never seen. Take an example of a geography teacher. You teach about New York. You have never been to New York. But now technology has brought an opportunity that there is a video. You can be able to share video with the learners, either through WhatsApp, either through whichever media. But the cheapest is to ensure that content is curated. It is collected, it is downloaded, packaged properly through a learning management system, and such is delivered, because every school knows where the learners are. And we are talking about the disparities. Which disparity really? Every place, every parent has a phone at home. And every school knows that there are my learners in such and such a place. So it's just a matter of the school taking leadership, a school leader taking leadership, talking to the parents that you can put content on such a phone and make sure that you use it to empower a learner.
Thank you so much. I want Allan to have sort of a last word on this. Allan, I want to ask you a very critical question. If it were possible to get handsets to learners, are there concessions that the telecom companies are willing to make to zero rate this content so that people can access it without having to pay through the nose for data charges? Do you have options to zero rate it? Is it something that you'd consider?
Yeah, just before I answer that question, I just want to just go back just a little bit to what Moses had said, just to expound on it a little bit, just to expand the possibilities, right? So today, I mean, he mentioned about, you know, the handsets that have got capacity of storing 128 GB on the phone. Yes, those capacities are there, but a lot of those handsets are smart and they're very expensive. Right now, when you look at the kind of economy that we are, a lot of the people may not be able to afford handsets that actually have that amount of capacity storage on their phones. There are options, okay? Players like Airtel have data centers today that are available for hosting of servers where content can be stored on a cache, all right? So that it's easily accessible with very fast speeds because of the latency being low because the servers are hosted locally. And then that means that, you know, anybody with any smart device, regardless of storage, at any time at a click of a button can actually access this data. But coming back to your question today, do we have options for zero rating? So the way zero rating works, you know, it's, let's assume I have access to a zero rated service. Let's call it like what we know today is toll-free voice. If I'm calling a utility company, there's a toll-free line, right? I call and I do not get charged. However, the utility company does pick up that particular bill at a very subsidized rate on behalf of the person making the toll-free call. At Airtel, we have this kind of product for the internet, okay? Where, and this has enabled some of our partners, right? Some universities, some secondary schools. Today we've got a few private primary schools that have actually started the school curriculum on a zero reverse build model where the student or the pupil doesn't have to have data on their line. Okay, and the way it works, you know, is the school basically gets into an agreement with Airtel. We provide them with a particular plan. We get all the numbers of all the students. We whitelist the websites or domains or URLs that are required for learning, all right, and then pass on the bill to the school at a very discounted rate. That is today available, and it's something, I mean, from a thought process would be very powerful if we did this with the Ministry of Education. All right, we're living in a digital era. I mean, a lot of our children, I think, are going to be a lot more tech savvy than ourselves. All right, all we need to do is empower them.
Thank you so much, Allan. And I now want to bring Daniel, who will give us the final word on this. Daniel, what are your final thoughts as we close off on this subject of accessing digital resources for our learners?
Actually, you know, as you keep, my dear friend from Airtel, he kept saying the public sector. The private sector is also very, very, very key. For example, many of the products you're mentioning, I mean, actually in the EdTech space, and some I'm hearing for the first time gladly, but maybe could such information maybe be more accessible besides those who may probably not have a chance to watch this program? Or I truly believe the ISPs, the providers of the internet, the public sector and the private sector who are actually on the ground as well would make a very good partnership. So I believe these kind of synergies between various sectors who are doing their parts we are some of many parts, but once we combine, our nation will be as developed as some of our neighbors, as well as some of the countries we look at to benchmark. So thank you, I believe collaboration is very important, and we need to support each other in all ways possible.
All right, thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you, Moses. Thank you, Allan, for allowing us to have this conversation. Of course, EdTech Monday is a space where we discuss what technology can do towards improving access to education, particularly during this COVID-19 pandemic. It is an ongoing conversation that's allowing opinion leaders to speak to each other and generate solutions. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of EdTech Mondays. Till the next one, have yourselves a good day.